Climate Change and the United Nations Regional Champion for Disaster Risk Reduction and Climate Change for the Pacific, for Asia Pacific, Senator Loren Legarda.
Thank you, Manny, and welcome all to the Philippine Senate. I cannot mention everyone present here and go through all the VIPs because all of you are VIPs, and all of you, most importantly, share our advocacy of making our nation and our world a more resilient nation. So I think that this high-level forum and a technical working group, both equally important. It's just a beginning of many things we can do to work together, whether we are in the legislature, in the executive, in local government, in global reinsurance business, in any aspect, or a very active environmentalist. So I'm glad that we have this multi-sectoral group present here today to lend their support to all those who have been victims of previous natural hazards which turned into disasters, and we want to make sure that in the aftermath of Typhoon Haiyan or Yolanda, we have our lessons learned and it should not happen again. As they say and they said, we are ruthless but not hopeless. This was and is the rallying slogan written on a tattered cloth put up by typhoon survivors in Tacloban. This is not going to be the last post-disaster banner we will see. I wish I could say otherwise, but I cannot. Filipinos are known to be a resilient lot. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said of our infrastructure, our schools, our cities, even our economy. The NEDA, in the recently released reconstruction assistance on Yolanda, or the RAY plan, which you all know about, estimated total damages and losses from Haiyan at $571 billion, or US dollars, 12.9 billion US dollars. Beyond these are the immeasurable impacts resulting from the loss of lives, now more than 6,000 and still counting. You would recall in 2009 on Doy and in Pepeng, I think that's internationally called Quetzana and Parma, if I'm not mistaken, the impact on our GDP was at least 2.7%. And that happens over and over again, and it cannot continue to be so. The ADB estimated that poverty incidence in Eastern Visayas, which was already high, the region hardest hit by Haiyan, increased from 41.2% in 2012 to 55.7% in 2013. This has had a tremendous impact on a national scale, pulling over 1 million people into poverty in the absence of income growth for our country. Disaster after disaster, we always say we need to build back better. Building back better, or simply put, just building better, will only be meaningful if the standards we use comply with resiliency benchmarks. And building better but below the standards is building less. Let us not restore the risks and vulnerabilities that existed before each storm. It is more economical, more efficient to make our communities resilient to disasters than to be held hostage by the exhausting and costly cycle of rebuilding our communities every time a typhoon, a storm surge, or an earthquake hits our communities. This morning, we are joined by our esteemed guests and experts who will talk about disaster risk financing and insurance, a key component of disaster risk management strategies. This forum, together with the outputs of the technical working group, will provide us with fresh insights on the importance of affordable and cost-effective disaster risk financing and insurance programs. We would like to thank Rowan Douglas, CEO for Capital Science and Policy Practice of the Willis Group and Chairman of the Willis Research Network, for joining us today. We also thank Ernest Rauch, Head of the Corporate Climate Center of Munich Re, who joins Mr. Douglas in the presentation of the 3 models for risk financing. We are honored by the presence of Senate President Frank Drilon. He's on his way down. Did you text him to come down? Okay. Undersecretary Jeremiah Paul from the Department of Finance, representing Secretary Purisima, who confirmed his attendance but texted me because his first and only son, his child, who was born yesterday, is being circumcised this morning. So his excuse, that's true, due to his paternity duties. Yes, I excused him. My colleagues in the House, in the Senate, my colleagues in government, in local government, key government officials, members of international organizations, our dear ambassadors of the diplomatic corps, partners in forming policy from leading academic and non-government institutions. Welcome all of you present here today. Dr. Jerry Velasquez, Chief of Advocacy and Outreach of the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, the UNISDR in Geneva, UNISDR Bangkok, will open the presentations by giving us an overview on catastrophic risk financing model. Jerry, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Senator Legarda. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I have a brief presentation to give you an overview of the issues that will be tackled more in detail by our colleagues from Willis and Munich Re. So if we could have the next slide, please. I think you're quite familiar with this map, or if you're not familiar with this map, it is a map that shows us the weather-related hazards and their frequency and intensity, the impact for the last 50 years. So we have from yellow to dark brown, the drought index. The dark brown areas are really prone to drought. And you can see where they are. They are in certain parts of Vietnam, Cambodia, and so on. On the tropical cyclone, it is from light green to dark green. This is the combined wind speed over the last 50 years. And as you can see here, certain parts of Luzon is practically, you cannot see it because of the number of typhoons that actually pass through Luzon. But this is history. But the thing is that things are changing because in the last 4 years, you've seen more typhoons coming down to Mindanao. But in this figure, you don't see a lot of typhoons coming to Mindanao. And then floods, which is from light blue to dark blue. And it's very clear that it's in the Mekong Delta where you see a lot of the floods in the region. So in this map, we could see that our real threat is really related to typhoons, related to hydrometeorological hazards. The next slide, please. These are the loss events in the Philippines from 1980 to 2013, the number of events. And as you can see, this basically shows that from 1980 to 2013, we are seeing more events. And the combination of events, the weather-related events are the largest proportion of disasters that have occurred in the Philippines. So the green, the light green and the dark green are the meteorological and hydrological events. It composes the largest component. The geophysical events, earthquake, tsunami, and volcanic eruptions, are the red component. So we can see the nature of the threat that faces the Philippines. The next one. And these are the overall and insured losses. And as you can see as well, the overall losses is fairly large. And the insured component of that is very small because the insurance penetration in the Philippines is quite small. So our main discussion here is the insured component. How can we then foster a larger part of that loss to be insured? Next slide, please. This is a national model. In an ideal world, if we have an ideal understanding of our risk, we have layers of risk. So the first layer, the top part, we reduce. This is risk reduction. So we invest a certain part of our national and local budget to reduce that risk. So mitigating it, making it stronger, enforcing the building code, land use, and so on and so forth. And then the middle portion, we can then transfer